Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hello, and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast, where today we radiate compassion with Heather Regan-Addis, who is the co-author of the Compassion-Based Living course. And this is an offering from O Books, which is my publisher. And Heather is here solo today because her writing partner and business partner, Choden, is not available. So we're just going to ask lots of questions today. Welcome, Heather. I am so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Christy. It's lovely to be here with you.
Lovely. And I can tell you're from England, but what part of England are you from?
Well, I'm from Yorkshire, so the northeast of England. So I live on the Yorkshire coast. So we have lots of seabirds here, like puffins and gannets. Yeah, it's very beautiful here. Yeah, we have puffins here. Yeah, one of the few places.
That's so lovely. I just returned from a beach vacation myself in Florida, and there were pelicans and I think albatrosses. The seabirds are fascinating, little pipers that dash across the ocean or across the sand. They're so cute. Wonderful. Well, you've written this compassion-based living course. Let's start off with, how do you define compassion?
Okay, so the working definition that we use in the book is attributed to the Dalai Lama, so kind of quite a good source. And it is a sensitivity to the suffering of ourselves and others with a deep desire to relieve that suffering. So there's two aspects to that definition. So sensitivity to the suffering of ourselves and others, which means turning towards suffering rather than avoiding it. And we use mindfulness skills for that. But then also cultivating resources so that we're able to respond skillfully to relieve compassion. So these are resources like kindness and courage and strength and wisdom.
I love that. So compassion is more than just being kind or just being nice.
Yeah, there's a real strength element to compassion. Sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm going to be compassionate, I'm going to be a bit of a doormat, but actually no. Sometimes the compassionate response is actually quite assertive about holding boundaries. So strength and courage are big components of compassion in the approach that we take.
Oh, I love that. Right. So practicing compassion, someone thinks that, well, I donate to good causes. I invite people in when they're having difficulty. I have empathy. How would you advise someone to start really living this compassionate way?
So our approach is a meditation-based approach. So we have daily meditations, and we start with self-compassion. So we start with turning towards and being with our own difficulties and cultivating the resources to respond skillfully to them, so that then when we understand that within ourselves, then we're much able to then be in a position to help other people. So we do some practices where we place the hand on the heart or make a gesture of self-soothing, or which might be placing the hand by the cheek or just holding your own hand, so feeling the warmth from the hands. And then we remind ourselves to kind of soften around any hard edges of our experience, soothe ourselves with a soothing voice tone, and then allow our experience to unfold. So that's one approach, which is drawn from the work of Chris Germer and Kristin Neff. And the other approach that we use to cultivate the resources is compassionate imagery. So imagery, imagination practices where we imagine kind of ideal compassionate beings or ideal compassionate colours or a safe place, and draw from that the qualities of compassion. So these are the two kind of main approaches, practice approaches that we use in the compassion training.
This compassion, or I should say, this book, a compassion-based living course, is this basically the textbook for your online or in-group practice?
Yes, so we've been teaching the compassion course. The first time we taught it was in 2009. So we've actually had thousands of people through this course. And it's also part of the University of Aberdeen master's degree in studies in mindfulness, which has been running for 15 years. So we're just recruiting our 16th cohort. So we've had thousands of people through the course. And like over the years, the course has developed as we've gained experience in how to really support people in cultivating compassion. So we got to the point where we felt, yeah, the course is kind of settled now. So then we wrote the book. So the book is like a systematic kind of chapter by chapter teachings and practices on compassion, and they all build on the chapter before. So it's a very systematic approach that you can read the chapter, contemplate the chapter, do the practices. And we have guided audio practices that you can download from a web page associated with the book. So kind of it's a complete course really that you could take over, say, 10 weeks or so.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds truly wonderful. How did you get into this? How did you, get started to practicing compassion in this way of wanting to teach it and really compile the instruction of it? I mean, it's like, right. How did you get started?
How did I get started? Well, before my daughter was born, I'd worked for a lawyer. I'd worked as a lawyer, as a patent lawyer, protecting people's inventions. I'd done that for about 20 years. And after she was born, she was quite poorly. And my experience in life was that if I kind of organized things, they worked out okay. But because she wasn't very well, they weren't working out okay. And I found that I was blaming myself because obviously I was doing something wrong, that there were all these problems. So that was the way I was thinking at the time. And that took me to some yoga classes to de-stress. And from that, my yoga teacher was a student of my meditation teacher, Rob Nairn, who was one of the founders of the Mindfulness Association, along with myself and Choden. So first of all, he put together a mindfulness course. And then he taught the first course. I was a student on the first course. And at the end of that course, he said, "Will you join the teaching team?" So I did. And then after that, the people who'd done the mindfulness course said, "What's next?" And then our teacher, Rob's teacher, my teacher, who's the abbot of Samyeling Tibetan Buddhist Center, said to us, "You need to teach compassion." So then we put the compassion course together. So Rob Nairn was a very experienced meditation teacher. He'd been teaching for 40 years. He comes from a Buddhist lineage, but he taught in very psychological language for Westerners. So kind of he started putting that course together. And then we connected with other people in the field. So as well as the Buddhist influence, we connected with Professor Paul Gilbert, who's a world-renowned psychotherapist who specializes in compassion-focused therapy. So my colleague Choden has written a book with Paul, Mindful Compassion. So we worked a lot with Paul, so we were influenced by his work. We worked a lot with Chris Gurman, Kristin Neff at that time. So we've drawn on their mindful self-compassion approach. And also we connected with Rick Hanson, who's a neuroscientist and a meditation teacher who focuses on cultivating happiness, hardwiring happiness in the brain through taking in the good and practicing gratitude and appreciation. So these were some of the kind of influences that went into the course. And like Rob and Choden and myself, we all actually have legal backgrounds. So we're all quite good at systematically putting things together so that they build one on top of the other. And then, as I said, we taught our first compassion course, which was over 3 weekends and a 5-day retreat from 2009 to 2010. And then the master's degree started in 2010. And then we've just we teach probably 5 or 6 compassion courses, maybe a year. Over the compassion course takes place over 3 weekends normally, and as well as the master's degree. So we've had hundreds and thousands of people through this course by now. And then as we've gone along, we've kind of honed our teaching to kind of figure out what really resonates with the students and helps them to cultivate compassion.
Right. Wow. Sounds like a quite comprehensive course. Why would someone want to take a course like this?
So anybody who's got perfectionist tendencies, Anybody who has got an inner critical voice that's giving them a really hard time, they would be the kind of people who would really benefit from this course. So I think one of the key messages in this course is that the human condition is not one of perfection. The human condition is a messy business. Our brain is evolved for survival, not for perfection and not for happiness. So this brain that we have with all our conditioning and how it's evolved is a very messy, tricky thing to navigate. So we recognize that. So then we can let ourselves off the hook of perfection and allow ourselves to be a mess, but to be a compassionate mess. So for many people, that is such a big relief because we don't have to be perfect anymore. That's our starting point, this idea of the compassionate mess.
So it sounds like this compassionate mess is, or understanding the compassionate mess is compassion for the self from the start. And you did say that that's your starting point in the class, which sounds an awful lot like metta, the practice
Yeah,
of loving kindness.
yeah, absolutely. So we start with the self-compassion, and it's not only us that's the compassionate mess. When we recognize we are, obviously we recognize everybody is. So then that naturally builds compassion for those around us. And as we move towards the end of the course, we move from self-compassion to compassion for others. And we use a Buddhist model for that, which is the four immeasurable qualities, which are loving kindness and metta, loving kindness, compassion, joy and equanimity. That's the kind of model that we use to kind of move compassion out just for ourselves, but to then spread it out to others. So yes.
Wow. And you said you started when your daughter was born and born sickly in a way. How's she doing now?
Oh, she's okay now, yeah. The first 2 years she was quite poorly, but later on in life, once she was about 2 years old, she was fine.
So happy to
So
hear
that's
that.
good.
Have you taught her the ways of compassion as well?
Yeah, a little bit. I think when she was really little, she was very interested, but kind of once she got to the teenage years, she wasn't so interested. But I think because she's grown up in a family where I've been very mindful and I've practiced compassion, and her father was a psychotherapist, so she's got quite a good theory of mind and is, I think, naturally quite mindful and compassionate.
Yeah. How can she help but, right?
Mm.
Um, and why do you think this course is needed now? Why do you think this book is needed now?
Well, I think that there's a lot of judgment in the world nowadays. There's
Yeah.
a lot of ideas that separate us and set us against each other. Um, and with the news and with social media, I think also there's a lot of people are very anxious about what's happening, people are very upset about what's happening, and compassion for ourselves in that difficulty and having the resources to kind of soothe ourselves and to support ourselves in that difficulty is really beneficial. And then I think once we recognize this idea of common humanity, that we're all these compassionate messes, then I think we naturally become more understanding of other people around us. And I think as well, since the pandemic, I find that people that I meet and the groups that we teach are not as happy as they used to be. I think they're a lot more stressed and unhappy. And so compassion really helps with that.
Yeah, do a happiness study. Some research organization does a happiness study every year and ranks
Mm.
countries according to happiness. And United States, where I live, is way down on the list. And
Mm.
the UK has also fallen quite a bit too. Why do you think that is? I don't want to take too much of your time, but I would like to ask you a few simple favors. First of all, please rate, review, and share this podcast wherever you're listening. It sounds like a simple little thing, and it is, but it has a huge impact for us because it helps other people find us in the podcasting algorithms. I don't know how it works, but I do know that it helps a lot. Next, if you would subscribe or follow wherever you're listening, whether that's YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you're listening, just hit subscribe or follow, and that helps you and it helps us. It helps you because then you receive notifications when we have a new episode that's out. It helps us because, again, algorithm magic, I don't know what happens, but it helps. And then finally, you can support our podcast in a tangible way by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast and then click on support the show. Now, we have a new feature too. We are now on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon. You can also find the link to Patreon when you go to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast. So on Patreon, for $3 a month or $5 a month, you can support your metaphysical and spiritual growth. You can learn about upcoming guests, and you can get early and ad-free versions of the shows. So please support us. This podcast is free for you to listen, but we have costs, and quite frankly, they come out of my pocket. So if you like this content, if you get a lot out of it, please see what you can do to give back. Thank you so much.
I think it's to do with inequalities, that there's some people that have got a lot of money, and then there's a lot of people who don't have quite enough money to manage. And so I think many people are struggling in their sort of day-to-day life to take care of themselves and take care of their families. And that's not a very nice way to be. There's a lot more insecurity, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, at least I think in the United Kingdom, we have like the National Health Service, and we have like a social security system, so that there are benefits if you lose your job, for example. But I think people still struggling.
Yeah, and I think this goes hand in hand with happiness and compassion and being able to look at others with this lens of everyone is a mess. I know here in the United States, there's so much division, and it seems to be getting worse and worse all the time, of us versus them, of white versus black, of those born here and those who are not. I mean, this is true of so many places, but just not allowing to live and let live. And this is a big problem here in other places. I do think that this compassion training could really help with that. So what is happening to get the word out about there are ways that we can actually learn to be more compassionate, and we can learn to bring compassion into our lives, and we should care about compassion?
Well, that's one of the motivations for writing this book. And we train people to teach this compassion course as well, so that hopefully that kind of ripples out and more people are able to practice compassion. One of the things that we do is, we started this at the beginning of the pandemic, actually, a free online sit on Zoom every day, every weekday. So we've just got to our 5-year anniversary. So every morning at 10:30, Monday to Friday, every evening at 7:00, Monday to Friday, anyone from all around the world can connect on Zoom. They just go to our website, mindfulnessassociation.net, click on a button and come into a Zoom room, and one of our tutors will guide a meditation practice. Yeah.
I love that. Twice a day, every day. Well, Monday through Friday.
Monday to Friday, yeah.
That is wonderful. You know, my church offers a similar service. I go to a Unity church, and there's Unity churches all over the world. And Unity, of course, began here in Kansas City, where I live. And we have a practice called Serenity, where every day at 12:10 and 5:30, 365 days a year, we have meditations led by volunteers. So I do Thursdays at 5:30. So these types of services, these meditation services, I think can go a long way to helping people understand not only themselves, but their place in the world, and compassion, and just touching in with the heart and touching in with the breath is so helpful. And many times I will do a meta type of meditation in my slot. So it's always nice. And these free resources are available to all of us. And, you know, we don't have to be wealthy or 1% to enjoy them at all. So this is wonderful. And this information the Zoom room can be found on your website.
Yes, mindfulnessassociation.net. Yeah.
Wonderful.
We have quite a lot of people from North America attend.
Do you? That's wonderful.
Especially the evening one. Yeah.
Evening one? Oh, I would imagine. Yes. Right. Because that would be late at night for us here in the States, I believe. I don't know.
So what time is it where you are now?
It is 12:30 where I am now.
12:30. So it would be, what would that be, about 2:00, I think, 2:00 in the afternoon?
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah, because you're later. Wonderful. So you've got a lot of resources here at mindfulnessassociation.net about courses and retreats. And so this course, if someone wanted to join the course, is it just always just ongoing? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's 3 modules. So the online version is 3 modules of either 5 or 6 sessions, and they take place on an evening UK time. So people can sign up. They run, I don't know, about 5 or 6 times a year. There's, yeah, as I say, 3 modules of 5 sessions, 2 hour, 5 2-hour sessions. So it's 30 hours or so in total.
Wow.
So people in the UK can come along and do an in-person course, but it's a bit more difficult for people in North America.
And again, I'm looking at your website, and it looks like another one is coming up March 28th to 30th. So very, very soon from when we are recording this. Is that's the mindfulness level 1?
So the mindfulness level 1 is mindfulness training, which comes first. So we've got 4 levels of training. So we start with mindfulness training, and then level 2 is our compassion training. So people would have to do the level 1 first. So we
Oh,
have it's like a 4-year training. So a year of mindfulness, a year of compassion, a year of insight, where you get to look at the kind of deeper levels of activity happening in the mind, and then finally a year of wisdom training. So by the end of that, people are resting in awareness and really have got to know the activity in their mind and recognize that they don't have to buy into it so much. So they end up being quite free and liberated by the end of the 4 years.
wow.
It's one of the things about mindfulness is really, really important, but we notice a massive transformation in the compassion training. And part of this is this inner self critic that many people have that gives us a hard time. So often I find people coming at the beginning of level 1 and they feel like it's like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders and their faces are kind of a bit pinched. And then we get to the end of the compassion training and it's like this weight is lifted and there's like an openness in the face and the heart, and people look about 10 years younger.
Yeah. I've done mindfulness and meditation courses in large corporations
Mm.
and usually over the lunch break, and come in and lead meditation. And there was one company where there were 2 women, older women, I'd say probably in their early 60s, and they were coming regularly. And after about 6 weeks,
Mm.
I remarked that they just looked different.
Yeah.
They looked about 5 to 10 years younger and just more approachable because their faces were pinched and just gave the aura of back off, don't talk to me. After a while, they started showing some noticeable, visible differences. So it sounds like you see this as well. So this whole course, this is impressive. It's not just like a weekend or a 6-week course or something like this. This is 4 years.
4 years, yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Mm.
And then I see that you've got another mindfulness level 1 is coming up in the summer, May 8th to June 19th.
Mm.
Yeah, followed by then there's level 2 classes as well. So this
Mm.
is interesting. You also have the practice of Mahayana Buddhism, which I'm sure I've butchered that pronunciation. Now, another question did want to ask you is, how does your course differ from, say, a Buddhist course or some other, just a psychological course in compassion?
Yeah. So most of our tutors are Buddhists and long-term Buddhists in the Tibetan Buddhist Kagyu lineage, and that is a big influence. But our meditation teacher, Rob Nairn, like he taught Westerners, and he took that Tibetan wisdom and translated it to practices and language that were accessible to anybody and didn't really require anybody to kind of buy into any kind of beliefs. It was very, very experiential. And so we've taken his teachings and we've continued to develop that. And we've also worked with psychologists like Paul Gilbert and Chris Germer and Christian Neff, neuroscientists, and some philosophers as well that we bring in as well. Then we draw on all these different threads, and they're all saying, I mean, what's wonderful is that they're all saying the same thing. The science and the Buddhist psychology are all saying the same thing. So kind of we meld these together And it's a very experiential approach. So the way we work is we give a little teaching, we'll give a practice, share a practice, and then there'll be an opportunity for people to share their experiences with each other. And then we come back and explore what our experiences were. So we don't ask anybody to kind of buy into any ideas. The training really just relies on people's own experience. So they have their own experience. They think, oh yeah, this is what my mind is like. This is how my mind works. This is how I can navigate my mind more skillfully. But this is the result when I become more compassionate. This is the result when I practice joyfulness. So people come to their own conclusions, and we're not being prescriptive in any way.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, right? Because sometimes these courses can be a bit prescriptive, and that's a little onerous. I do feel. So I love that you are blending things like Buddhist teachings and evolutionary psychology together.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how science is proving these concepts,
Mm.
which had not happened before. I mean, this is a fairly new development, but things are being confirmed here. And I think this is wonderful. So, again, this course, this book, I should say, is the basics of the course. So what would be the difference between taking the course and going through the course in the book?
Yeah, so I guess the book is like a self-help version that you could do on your own, or you could get a group of friends together. You would go through it chapter by chapter, listening to the guided audio practices, talking to each other about what you're learning. So that would be self-guided. Whereas if you do one of the courses with us, you've got a very experienced meditation teacher who's practiced compassion for over a decade. So he's able to kind of embody the qualities of compassion and teach from that embodied position. So I think you would recognize this, that in really good meditation teaching comes from a teacher that kind of walks their talk and is able to embody what it is that they're teaching, so that there's like sort of a human transmission of an energetic level, as well as it just being kind of words and practices. Whereas with the book, we've tried as much as possible with the book to really kind of transmit the core of the teachings, and we share the practices, but maybe and also you've got someone that's very experienced that can sort of guide you if you hit any obstacles.
Mm-hmm. Right. Can you give any examples of things that have happened in terms of like benefits from compassion training?
Yes. So one of the main ones is this inner self-critic that gives us a really hard time. And that kind of transforms into a voice of kind of compassionate care. And that's great, or eventually it does anyway. But even if it doesn't transform immediately, there's a little bit of space between you and the voice, so that you can decide whether you want to listen to the voice and take it on board, or whether you go, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I hope you're all well. Yeah, I hope you're well, but I don't have to listen. I don't believe what you're telling me. Yeah. So we do a practice of the inner self-critic where we imagine the inner critical voice as a being, and then notice what it's like to receive this criticism and how it makes us feel. And we ask ourselves, does this critic have our best interests at heart? And then we offer compassion to the critic. So it's not like you're trying to get rid of it or push it away. You're relating with it in a different way. So you ask it, what's driving you and what will help you to find peace? And then you offer it some compassion, then often it changes. So it's about kind of relating to this inner critical voice in a different way, recognizing that this inner critical voice, it was something that developed over the years to try to keep us safe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work as intended, because it tends to harass us too much. So it gives us too much of a hard time. But its intentions are good, even if it doesn't work as intended, if you see what I mean. But then if we can offer it some compassion, there's a lot to be learned there.
Yeah.
People just become happier, and they have tools so that when something difficult happens in life, what we tend to do is the difficult things happen, and then we give ourselves a hard time over it. So we talk about the 3 arrows. The first arrow is like something difficult happens. The second arrow is I say, oh no, this terrible thing has happened. This is awful. Things like this always happen to me. And then the third arrow is there's something wrong with me. So rather than just the initial pain, you've got this kind of second arrow of kind of rumination and self-recrimination, and then the third arrow of I'm not good enough. So those two arrows are self-created by our thinking activity. And if we train our mind not to thinking that way, then all we have to is the, authentic pain of life, which is about 10% compared to the 90% of the suffering that we add on by how we react to when difficult things happen. So, we can live the 10%, and it makes for a lot happier life than ruminating and giving ourselves a hard time and thinking that we're worthless.
That is beautiful. Now, where can someone pick up a copy of the Compassion course?
The publisher, Collective Inc., you can get it from there. You can get it from Amazon, and you could ask your local bookshop to order you in a copy as well.
Yeah, I love that. Again, the book is Compassion-Based Living Course, a practical guide to living a compassionate life by Shodan and Heather Regan-Addis. Is there anything that we have not discussed, anything we left out that you think is important for our audience to know?
Yes, I think there's one thing, and that is throughout the course, we have a focus on gratitude and appreciation, because turning towards and being with suffering can be a bit heavy. So we counteract that with a consistent focus on appreciating and being grateful for the good things in life. And a disciplined practice of gratitude and appreciation leads to a joyful life. And by cultivating joy, we kind of resource ourselves to face what's difficult when difficult things happen.
Totally agree. Again, the book is Compassion-Based Living Course, a practical guide to living a compassionate life. My guest today has been Heather Regan-Addis, and I appreciate your insight and your time so much. Thank you so much for being part of this and talking about your book and talking about the practice in general. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. It's been lovely to be here with you, Christy.
Thank you. Don't know what to watch next? Decisions. Well, we've got some suggestions. You can click this little video here and watch that. It's something that we think you're going to like. If you like the last one, you're going to like that one too. You can also click on the subscribe button. And if you do that, then you'll get notifications whenever we have a new video up. Win-win, right?